I'm a 26-year-old woman, and like a lot of people my age, I'm still living at home. The job market isn't great, and rent prices are even worse, so staying with my parents has been my only real option for now. On the surface, things are fine. My parents and I get along well enough, but there's this undercurrent to our relationship that I can't ignore. They're the type of people who think they know what's best for me, always. Sometimes it's harmless advice about budgeting or career choices. Other times, it feels like they want to control every aspect of my life. One thing I've always been proud of is my hair. It's natural, unprocessed, and something I've spent years taking care of. I've never dyed it or done anything drastic because I like it the way it is. It's part of my identity, and maintaining it has always been a big deal for me. My friends often joke about how protective I am of it, but I just see it as self-care. Over the past few months, though, I started noticing small, strange things. At first, it was my pillowcases. They'd have weird stains on them that didn't make sense. I thought maybe I was sweating in my sleep or something, but it didn't look like regular sweat marks. Then there was this odd tingling on my scalp some mornings, like I'd used a product that didn't agree with me, but I hadn't changed anything in my routine. The lighting in my room can be tricky, so when my hair started looking a little different, almost like it was lighter in certain spots, I figured it was just the way the light hit it. But then my friends started asking questions. Did you dye your hair? It looks different, kind of shinier. I laughed it off because I knew I hadn't touched it. I chalked it up to paranoia or just them imagining things. Still, their comments stuck with me. The more I thought about it, the more I noticed other strange things. My shampoo smelled different, like it wasn't the brand I'd been using for years. The bristles on my hairbrush had this faint discoloration, which was new. And then there were the comments my parents would make. Little things like, change can be good, or you'd look amazing with just a bit of color. I brought it up one night, half joking. I asked them if they'd been sneaking into my room and doing something to my hair while I was asleep. It was meant to be funny, a way to tease them for their constant meddling. They laughed it off, but the way they acted afterward was strange. My mom quickly changed the subject, and my dad suddenly needed to check something in the kitchen. It was such an over-the-top reaction that it left me wondering if I'd hit on something real. That's when I decided to start paying attention. I set up my old phone as a makeshift security camera, hiding it in a pile of books on my nightstand. It wasn't something I ever thought I'd have to do in my own home, but I needed answers. For a few nights, nothing happened. I started to think I was being ridiculous and that I'd wasted my time. Then, on the fourth night, I finally saw it. Watching the footage the next morning felt like a punch to the gut.
My parents, both of them, had come into my room while I was dead asleep. My mom was holding a bowl of something, and my dad had gloves on. They were dyeing my hair, carefully, methodically, like it was some kind of project they were proud of. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It wasn't just a one-time thing either. From the way they moved, this was routine for them. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to be absolutely sure before confronting them, so I started digging around. I went through the cabinets in their bathroom and found a stash of hair dye bottles and conditioners labeled for color-treated hair. The shades matched the slight changes I'd noticed in my hair. Then there were the receipts. I found a few crumpled up in the trash with dates going back months. They'd been doing this for a while. The betrayal I felt was unreal, but I couldn't just storm into the living room and start yelling. My parents were the type to deny, deflect, and turn the blame back on me if I wasn't careful. I needed a plan. Their anniversary dinner was coming up in 2 weeks, and they were planning a big event with family and friends. That gave me just enough time to figure out how to make my point, loud and clear. For now, it kind of made sense. Acting like everything was normal, it was hard to sit at the dinner table with them, pretending I didn't know what they'd been doing to me while I was asleep. Every time I smiled or made casual comments about how short my hair was, or made my comment about how short my hair was, I felt like I was going to break. together and laugh about ridiculous things. They made me realize
Realize that family doesn't have to mean blood. It's about the people who show up for you. Looking back, I realized how much I'd grown through the ordeal. Losing trust in my parents was one of the hardest things I'd ever experienced, but it forced me to stand on my own 2 feet. I'd spent so much of my life trying to meet their expectations, and now, for the first time, I was figuring out what I wanted for myself. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Update 4. After months of no contact, I received a letter from my parents. This time it felt different. It wasn't defensive or full of justifications like their earlier attempts. They acknowledged their actions, admitted they had been wrong, and apologized for violating my trust. They wrote that they missed me and wanted to rebuild the relationship, promising they'd respect my boundaries moving forward. The tone of the letter was sincere enough that I decided to give them a chance, but only under strict conditions. I agreed to meet them in a neutral, public place, a small cafe not far from my apartment. It was awkward at first. My parents looked like they didn't know where to start, so I let them take their time. They apologized again, this time face to face, and admitted they hadn't considered how much their actions would hurt me. They assured me they'd never interfere in my life like that again, and asked if we could work toward repairing our relationship. I listened, keeping my guard up but appreciating the effort they were making. I told them that rebuilding trust would take time, and that there would be boundaries they couldn't cross. We began communicating cautiously after that. I agreed to occasional phone calls and short visits, but made it clear I wouldn't tolerate any attempts to control or criticize my choices. They seemed to understand, although there were moments when their old habits tried to resurface. For instance, my mom once suggested I grow my hair out and try a more professional look now that I was working a better job. I reminded her that my appearance was my choice, and to her credit, she backed off without a fight. Family gatherings were still tense. Some relatives who had sided with my parents avoided me altogether, while others tried to play peacemaker, urging me to let it go for the sake of harmony. My parents and I kept our interactions minimal at these events, sticking to polite conversation and avoiding sensitive topics. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the outright hostility from before. One thing that frustrated me was their attempt to compensate with gifts. They started sending me small items, home decor, clothes, even a high-end hair care set. It felt like they were trying to buy back my forgiveness, which didn't sit well with me. I thanked them but politely declined most of the gifts, reiterating that actions mattered more than things. They seemed disappointed but respected my decision. Despite the ups and downs, I could tell they were making an effort. My dad started asking more about my work and showed genuine interest in my projects. My mom occasionally texted to share a recipe or ask how I was doing, keeping things light and friendly. It was a far cry from the overbearing behavior I'd grown used to. And while I still had my reservations, I appreciated the change. During this time, I found ways to process everything that had happened. I started journaling as a way to untangle my thoughts and emotions. Writing it all down helped me make sense of the betrayal, the fallout, and the slow steps toward reconciliation. It also gave me a space to reflect on my own growth. I realized how much stronger and more independent I'd become since moving out. I also picked up a new hobby, painting. It started as a casual project to fill my evenings but quickly became something I looked forward to. I experimented with abstract art and bold colors, channeling my emotions into every piece. It wasn't about being good at it. It was about expressing myself in a way I hadn't before. My friends loved my work and encouraged me to keep going, even suggesting I display my pieces at local art fairs. Over time, my parents began to make small, meaningful gestures. They sent me handwritten notes on my birthday and kept their messages short and respectful during holidays. When I visited, they avoided making comments about my appearance or lifestyle. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where I could see them struggling to fully accept my independence, but they were trying, and that mattered. I allowed these small steps but stayed wary of old patterns repeating themselves. I made it clear that any breach of trust would set us back to square one. They seemed to understand, and the relationship slowly settled into a civil, distant dynamic. We weren't as close as we'd been before the incident, but we weren't at war anymore, either. As I looked back on everything, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I was glad to have my life back on track and to feel like my own person again, but I couldn't help wishing things had been different. If my parents had respected my boundaries from the start, none of this would have happened. Still, I knew I couldn't change the past. All I could do was move forward. My friends reminded me to keep standing my ground, and I took their advice to heart. The new boundaries I'd set weren't just for my parents, they were for me. They were a reminder that my autonomy was worth protecting, no matter what. Update 5. The months after reconnecting with my parents were surprisingly calm. The boundaries I'd set earlier held firm, and they seemed to genuinely respect them. There were no sudden visits, no unsolicited advice about my appearance or lifestyle, and no guilt-tripping texts. It felt like they'd finally understood that my autonomy wasn't up for negotiation. They still expressed regret for what they'd done, but it was in small, quiet ways rather than grand gestures. I noticed the change, and while the damage wasn't entirely undone, it was a step forward. The extended family drama, which had been a constant buzz for so long, began to die down. The relatives who had taken my parents' side seemed to lose interest once they realized I wasn't engaging. At family events, the tension slowly eased. My parents kept their distance unless I approached them, and even the relatives who had been the most vocal about my overreaction stopped bringing it up. It was like everyone collectively decided to move on, and I was happy to let them. In my personal life, I continued to explore my identity. My shaved head, which had started as an act of defiance, became a canvas for creativity. As it grew back, I experimented with bold colors, bright reds, purples, and even electric blue. It was something I'd always wanted to try but had hesitated because of my parents' opinions. Now I didn't have to think twice. My friends loved it and encouraged me to keep experimenting, and I felt more confident in my appearance than ever before. Reconnecting with the relatives who had supported me during the fallout was another bright spot. A few of them reached out, inviting me to coffee or small gatherings, where we caught up and talked about everything but the drama. It was refreshing to have family who genuinely cared about me without trying to dictate my life. Those connections became stronger over time, and I realized I didn't need the approval of everyone in my family, just the ones who truly respected me. My friends, who had been my rock through the entire ordeal, remained my chosen family. We celebrated my milestones together, like when I landed a promotion at work or finished my first painting commission. They were there for the little things too, helping me pick out new furniture for my apartment or joining me for spontaneous movie nights. Their unwavering support reminded me that I wasn't alone, even when things felt difficult. Career-wise, things were going better than ever. The new job I'd taken after moving out gave me the stability I'd been craving. I threw myself into my work, taking on new challenges and proving myself to my team. The confidence I'd gained from reclaiming my independence translated into my professional life, and it wasn't long before my efforts were recognized. I started receiving more responsibilities, and my manager even hinted at a potential leadership role in the future. My relationship with my parents continued to improve, slowly but steadily. They stopped trying to push their ideas of what my life should look like and instead started showing interest in the choices I was making. My mom even complimented one of my bold hair colors during a holiday dinner, which I took as a small but meaningful gesture. My dad, who had always been more reserved, began asking about my painting hobby and offered to help me set up a small studio space in my apartment. These little changes made me feel like they were genuinely trying to meet me halfway. Despite the progress, I remained cautious. I made it clear that while I was willing to rebuild our relationship, I wouldn't tolerate any repeat behavior. They respected that, and over time, our interactions settled into a civil, manageable dynamic. It wasn't the close-knit bond we'd had before, but it was healthier and more balanced. Looking back, I can see how much I've grown since everything happened. The ordeal taught me the importance of standing up for myself and setting boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable. It also showed me who I could truly rely on, friends who became family and family members who chose to support me unconditionally. I realized that while the experience had been painful, it had also made me stronger and more self-assured. These days, I share the story of what happened with new friends as a funny but poignant anecdote. They're usually shocked when they hear about my parents dyeing my hair without my consent, but we laugh about the anniversary dinner showdown. It's become a reminder of how far I've come and how much I've gained by reclaiming my autonomy. As I move forward, I'm focused on building the life I want, one where my choices are mine alone. My career is thriving, my relationships are solid, and my confidence has never been higher. The journey wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Reclaiming my independence and my identity was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most empowering. In the end, every struggle and every moment of uncertainty led me to where I am now, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.